Thank God that I can come here now to the RHTS. Last week I was in the Student Spiritual Convocation in Hillsborough, and over there we had, I think, 75 students, about 75 students, just E2 and J1. And thank God 3 people received the Holy Spirit. And thank God that it concluded yesterday, so I'm here now. I think I know most of you guys from previous seminars, but I like to learn names the first class, so I think I don't recognize you. What's your name? Stephen from Philadelphia. Okay. How long have you been in Philadelphia?
I've been there for a lot of years, but it's only been recently that I've really been attending.
Oh, okay. Okay. When were you baptized?
Last April.
Okay. Thank God. All right. So we have Timothy, Jonathan. No, Stephen. Sorry, Stephen, Paul, Benny, Manvin. Is it Manvin or you go by Marvin now? Manvin. I like Manvin. I'm going Manvin. We have Hao. That's right, Ling Hao. Jia Hao. Mark. Timothy. Eno. Edward. Hanson, right? Johnny and Charles. Charles, for some reason, I'm getting the feeling that you're not in high school. Well, thank God. You've been here the whole time? Oh, thank God. Okay. Okay, thank God. New face. What's your name? Shannon. Have we met before? Oh, we have? Where are you from? Toronto? Shannon? Oh, okay. We've met before? What's your last name? You are Ted's sister? Okay. You almost forgot your brother. Okay. Okay. Shannon. Maybe you look different or something. I'm not sure. Okay. Rochelle, Sabrina, Angela, Xingru, Monica, Abigail. Abigail is back. Okay. Sophia, Vivian, Deborah, Isabel, Shani, Jenny, and new face. 张璇，你从哪里来的？台湾哪里？台北教会吗？台北哪里？永和教会 ，OK， 永和教会，欢迎你来哦。OK， 张轩，第二声 ，OK， 轩 ，OK， thank God. My name is Samuel. If you don't know, Samuel Kuo, and I'm a pastor for Flushing Church and also Boston Prayer House. And thank God that we have this time together in the RHTS to learn about God's Word. For the first 5 hours, 5 lessons, we'll be talking about, 7 lessons. We'll be talking about the book of Esther, right? The book of Esther. How many of you guys have read the book of Esther before? Yeah, I think most of us, right? How many? I think this might be one of the first times we're teaching it in a seminar. How many of you have been taught the book of Esther in a seminar before? A few? Okay. It's the first time I'm teaching this book, hopefully we can learn a lot together. The first class I'd like to spend talking mostly about some background information. Okay. Just some facts that maybe you might have known. Esther is one of 2 books named after a woman. What's the other one? Ruth. Okay. Esther is also one of 2 books that does not mention the name of God. What's the other one? Are you aware that the book of Esther doesn't mention the name of God? You guys know that, right? What's another book that does not mention the name of God? Song of Solomon. Okay? Song of Solomon. Esther is also one of 2 books that deal specifically with the persecution of the Israelites. What's the other one? This one's easy. Exodus. All right, Exodus. Okay? So those are just some things that you might not have known or have known, and just to review. Okay? This lesson, I would like to first go over where Esther fits in terms of Jewish history, because I think it gives us a better concept of what's going on. I'm going to make a timeline here. Maybe you can do this in your notes too. I'm going to start with first of all, let me just ask, how many times do we see that the Jewish people were taken into exile, into Babylon? How many times in the Bible? Okay, we don't know this one? A lot of times. How many times? More than one hand? 3, yeah, 3 times. Yeah, 3 exiles. Okay, 3 exiles. So this is good, we're reviewing this. This is some common Jewish history that we should probably know, okay? By the way, let's just first make a mark, right? When was Jerusalem and the temple finally completely destroyed? You guys know which year that was? This one's an important year that you should know. Nobody knows this? Sophia? Okay. 586 BC. Yet, you know how I usually remember that? When I was younger, we had computers, right? Well, you guys have computers too, but we had computers, and the way that computers were named was what? 286. Do you remember? 286, 386, 486. I'm pretty old, okay? So their computers used to be called after the type of CPU that was inside, I think. So before the Pentium came out, the Pentium chip came out, it's called the 286, and the 386, the 486, and then the Pentium came out. So that was like the 586. But it was not called the 586, it was called the Pentium. It's called the Pentium chip. So anyway, that's how I remember. This is when Jerusalem is destroyed by the Babylonians. That is also the third and final exile. Okay, but prior to it, there was also a second exile and then a first exile. Right? So this one's about 605 BC, and this is about 597 BC. Let me look something up real quick. This is also kind of handy because this will help you to relate it to the prophets that were happening at the prophets that were contemporary to these events. Okay, so this is the first exile is when Daniel was taken captive. Second time, Ezekiel was taken. This is based off of Ezekiel chapter 1 verse 2. Right? And then the third exile, no one was taken captured that's really that famous, but Jeremiah was living during that time, right? Jeremiah is kind of contemporary to this, right? He kind of lived around this time. Any questions? Okay, so how many years until the Israelites or the Jews, their captivity ended? How many years? Oh, wow, we should know this. There's a prophecy in Jeremiah. How many years? 70. Okay, good. 70 years, right? And it really depends on how you count. If you start from 70 years from 605, it works too. And then if you count from 70 years from 586, it works too. But basically what happens is around 5, it's approximate, okay? Approximate. 536, second temple, work begins, right? And then 516, there was a pause in between, 20 years. They just laid the foundation, and then they ran into some trouble. So they just went back to their own daily lives and neglected the temple for 20 years. And then in between, do you know what prophets were sent to encourage them? Yeah, Z is good. Zechariah and Haggai. Okay? If you read the book of Zechariah and if you read the book of Haggai, that's all like around this time. To encourage the people not to just think about their own comfort and their own lives, but don't forget about the temple, which is neglected. Right? So when you count like from 605 to 536, that's pretty much 70 years. If you go from 586 to the time the temple was completed, that's also 70 years. Okay? All right. So maybe I do another color. Babylon is basically the superpower back here. All the way to here, where King Cyrus, right? King Cyrus conquers Babylon. So this is when the Persian Empire began. Right? This is Cyrus. And Cyrus, actually, his name was prophesied in the Bible, in the book of Isaiah. And God already prophesied in the book of Isaiah about 200 years before he was even born that he would be God's servant, that he would be God's instrument. Okay, and eventually what happened? Cyrus was the Persian king that God moved to allow the Israelites to go back to Jerusalem and construct the temple. All right? Okay, so shortly after, then you have these dates are more approximate, but around 446. This is more approximate, okay? So this is when Nehemiah went back to Jerusalem to do what? Do you guys remember? What did he do? To build the walls, right? To rebuild the walls. So the wall was rebuilt. And around that time also, okay, by the way, he goes back, he returns sometime later, I think maybe 12 years later. It's around 433-ish, maybe, right? He returns, and he sees that the faith of the Jews were not doing very well. Like he saw that people were not offering tithes. There's even a Gentile who was renting one of the rooms in the temple. Right? He saw that a lot of the Jews were intermarrying with the Gentiles, and then the kids could not even speak Hebrew or Aramaic. Right? He saw that people were not keeping the Sabbath. So he saw that people's faith was in decline. So he went back and he reinstituted some reformations. Okay. Anyway, around that time is also the contents of Malachi. Okay. So when you read the book of Malachi, you can also think about it's towards the end of this part of Jewish history that we see in the Bible. Okay, so where does Esther fit in all of this? Sometimes the kings in the books in the Bible, and then also the name of the kings that are known throughout history, sometimes there's slight differences, but in book of Esther, do you guys know what the king's name is? Xerxes, yeah. Or in some translations of the Bible, it says what? NKJV uses the name what? We can turn to, let's turn to book of Esther. Book of Esther, chapter 1, verse 1. Let's ask Angela. Yeah, Ahasuerus. Ahasuerus. But most historians think that Ahasuerus is just like the Hebrew way to refer to the same king, which is better known in history as Xerxes. Okay. So Xerxes would have begun to reign around 480 87. Or better known as Xerxes. Okay. And then shortly after he was king, then Esther becomes queen around 480. Okay. This is Esther. Okay, so I hope this gives you a better picture of the contents of the Bible and then where all the events fit in chronological order, right? Maybe the dates may be off by a few years here and there, right? Most of them are approximate and the best guesses that historians have made. But in general, the order of things is consistent. So when you read the book of, like when you get to this section in the Bible, right, you see 3 books in the Christian Bible. You see Ezra, Nehemiah, and then what? Then Esther. But sometimes people may think, oh, Ezra is first chronologically, and then Nehemiah is next chronologically, which is true. And then people think that then, oh, Esther is after the events of Nehemiah. But actually, no, the events of Esther precedes what happened in Nehemiah. Okay? You understand? Questions? Okay, so I think like there's a lot of detail here, a lot of dates. I think the things that you should try to remember, especially as you learn more about the Bible, definitely know this year, okay? The year Jerusalem was destroyed. The temple and everything was burned to the ground, 586 BC. That one's probably one of the key dates, right? And then, historically, when did the Persians take over? This one's not as important, but I think most people date it to 539. Okay, 539. Know this one, and then just like know more like the sequence of things. And then some contemporary prophets and books in the Bible that you can kind of put together. That way, when you read the Bible, you kind of have a better historical background of what like, you know, what's going on, what are some historical things that have been going on before and after those events that you read in the Bible. All right. Any questions? Okay. This is good? This is new to a lot of people? Okay. So make sure you jot it down, okay? Okay, let's also talk a little bit more about the background of Esther. Does anybody know who wrote the book of Esther? Anybody know? Who wrote the book of Esther? Isabel? Esther? Huh? A Jewish writer? You have like an introduction thing in your Bible? Okay, yeah. So we don't know who wrote the book of Esther, and the best guess is a Jewish writer. Yeah. You know how like some books in the Bible, the author is pretty clear. He makes himself known, him or herself known, himself known. The book of Esther does not, and some people have thought maybe it was Mordecai. Some people thought maybe it was Esther herself, but it's not clear. And so the best that we can say is that it was a Jewish author who did have access to this type of knowledge, right? Okay. Okay, let's also, I want to show you the Persian Empire at this time too. I want to give you a map. Let's read first Esther chapter 1, verse 1. Angela, can you finish reading chapter 1, verse 1? Okay, from India to Ethiopia, right? The book of Esther starts off talking about how great King Ahasuerus, his reign was. And it starts by talking about the expanse of his empire. Right? How big was it? This is an approximate map of how large his empire was. No signal? Plug it in again? All right. I know sometimes I have trouble with this. Oh, there we go. Display settings. I'm going to make this like this. Keep. Okay, looks better. Oops. Oops. Okay. All right, do you see in this map that there's a area that's shaded yellow more? Okay. So that's basically indicating what part of the empire, what part of the map used to belong to the Persian Empire. And expand from the Bible, it was just saying that expanded from Ethiopia, which is down. Where's my cursor? Where is the cursor? See the cursor? I don't see the cursor. Okay. Well. Sorry. Well, anyway, you guys know where Ethiopia is? It's in Africa, right? All right. It's in Africa. And, yep. Oh, yeah, you can move the board. Yeah, sure. Okay, so Ethiopia is like down here, right? Ethiopia will be down here. And then you can see it even started to go into Greece. So the Persians fought the Greeks in a pretty famous war, I think. But I think the Persians could not eventually conquer. Yeah, later on it was Alexander, right? Alexander who conquered all of this. But the Persian Empire eventually expanded all the way to India, the Indus River, right? So all this was the Persians. Right? So Alexander later on, who conquered the Persians, had an even greater empire from India all the way to Greece and Macedonia. But the Persians themselves had a kingdom that the world had never seen at that point in time. Right? They conquered what the Babylonians had, but even more. And so they divided their kingdom into what were called satrapies, right? So there are 127 provinces. These are basically provinces that we see in chapter 1, verse 1. Okay. Can we get the board back then? No? Okay, thanks. Just give you a mental picture, right? And one thing I wanted to highlight, if you can see, is just where is the city? Let's read verse 2. Esther chapter 1, verse 2. Sabrina. Okay, in Shushan the citadel, which means is like a fortified palace. Shushan is also known as Susa. Okay, I guess it depends on the language or depends on how you pronounce it and then spell it. But Susa is right here. You guys see it? You see the cursor? Okay, here's the cursor, right? You see it moving? Right here. So, actually, there are other books in the Bible that also make reference to Susa. Do you guys know? Who else? Which Bible character also spent some time in Susa? Let's turn to. Well, this gives it away. Nehemiah. Nehemiah chapter 1, verse 1. Nehemiah chapter 1, verse 1. Johnny. Okay, you can just stop right there. As I was in Shushan, the citadel. So same place. Same place. I guess that was like the capital city at the time. Right? Do you know anyone else who has spent time there? Huh? Sorry? Ezra? Maybe, but I don't have that verse. Yeah. Let's turn to Daniel. Daniel chapter 8. Daniel chapter 8, verse 2. Daniel chapter 8, verse 2. Hanson. Okay, right. So Daniel also spent time in Shushan, the citadel, which was in the province of Elam. Actually, Shushan today would be in modern day Iran. Iran. Okay. Ezra, I don't know. Maybe Ezra was too, but I have to look that up. Okay. Any questions? Okay, so in our classes on Esther, we'll be, I think you know the story from when you were younger, like in E2 or J1. But our focus in Esther, of course, we'll cover that material again, but we want to also look at it from like a family life angle too. Okay, so there's some aspects that we can of family life and relationships that we can learn from. We'll talk a little bit about marriage, a little bit about we could talk a little bit about adoption, right? We could talk a little bit, more about marriage. Okay, more about marriage here. I'm also going to be teaching a class on Isaac and Jacob. So that one also, I think you know those characters, but we'll be focusing on those characters more from a family life angle. And for those classes, we will also talk about different relationships. Of course, marriage there too, but then we can also talk about parent and child, their relationship with their parents, and then their relationship with their kids too. Okay, and then of course their relationship with their spouses. So there's more relationships that we can talk about over there. In Esther, I think the main ones that I'll focus on is about marriage, and then you guys know what's the relationship between Mordecai and Esther? Mordecai and Esther, they were cousins. Yeah, I think probably second cousins. Okay, second cousins, because Esther was the daughter of Mordecai's uncle. And of course, we don't know like how far away of an uncle he was, but assuming that it's a typical uncle that we think of, then probably, it could be first or second cousins, I guess, right? It could be first or second cousins. So anyway, they were cousins. So we can talk a little bit about that too, about people who are in the same generation. But then in this case, I guess Mordecai was much older than Esther. So then there was also like adoption involved, where Mordecai took her in as his own daughter. Okay? So I think our class ends here for this one. So any questions? We'll continue in 10 minutes. Any questions of the background? Okay, let's bow our heads and pray in silence.